afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm pleased to stand before you with Chief Melvin Russell, Major Stephen Holman, Sergeant Alan Woods on behalf of the Baltimore Police Department, Federal Bureau of Investigation's Special Supervisory Agent Matt Vilsick, Department of Juvenile Services Regional and Assistant Regional Director, Baltimore City, Dwayne Johnson and Bernice Walker, the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice Human Trafficking Coordinator Thomas Stack, and Chair of Baltimore City Human Trafficking Collaborative, Councilman Christopher Burnett, to announce the indictment of a major human trafficking operation in the city of Baltimore. Last Thursday, May 30th, through the partnership of all of the agencies here, we successfully indicted Dante Barr on 19 counts of human trafficking, most of which are human trafficking of minors. Although Mr. Barr is innocent unless and until proven guilty, through the course of nearly a year-long investigation originally derived from a community tip given to the Department of Juvenile Services agent, it is alleged that Mr. Barr was involved in a human trafficking scheme where approximately 25 women, the majority of which were vulnerable minors, that were coerced, recruited, transported, threatened, sexually abused, and/or induced by Mr. Barr to perform unlawful sexual acts for his financial gain. If convicted of the offenses charged, he would face up to 385 years incarceration. As we've recently become aware, human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery that involves the use of force, fraud, and/or coercion to recruit, transport, abduct, or deceive vulnerable individuals, including children, as a means to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. Every year, millions of these individuals are trafficked in countries around the world, including the United States, generating billions of dollars in profit. Human trafficking is a hidden crime because victims rarely come forward to seek help for a variety of reasons, including fear of the traffickers, distrust of law enforcement, or an intense trauma that causes participants not to identify as victims. Traffickers commonly use the internet and a variety of social media sites to recruit victims, solicit customers, and hide their identities from law enforcement, which is why I'm encouraged by this indictment, which represents the type of multi-agency collaboration that is not only needed to find these type of predators and circumvent their operations, but this multi-agency collaboration that you see before you once again showcases the criminal justice system at its best. So with that, I would especially like to thank my Chief Deputy, Michael Schatzow, Deputy of Major Crimes, Patricia DeMeo, Chief of our Major Investigations Unit, Gerald Collins, and his entire team of talented prosecutors, including Assistant State's Attorney Richard Gibson, who also led this investigation, Assistant State's Attorney Rena Cates, Juvenile Human Trafficking Coordinator at the time of this offense, or these charges. You will hear more from Gerald shortly, who will go over a few more specifics of the investigation and pending case. And as previously stated, it should be noted that the indictment is a mere allegation and that this individual is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law. And now I'd like to turn it over to we'll be turning it over to Councilman Christopher Burnett.
Thank you, Madam State's Attorney. I'll keep my remarks short and sweet. I co-chair the Baltimore City Human Trafficking Collaborative, and on behalf of that collaborative, I would like to extend a huge thank you to the hard work of our law enforcement partners and the State's Attorney's Office in bringing this indictment forward. It is a huge priority for the collaborative to hold folks accountable for their actions and taking advantage of our young people in the city of Baltimore, and we are committed to leveraging resources and continuing to create an environment of collaboration and partnership to hold traffickers accountable and show folks that Baltimore is not the place, this is not the region to take these actions. And we will continue to fight for our young people who both traffic, both sexually and in labor trafficking, to make sure that they have everything they need to return home into their communities and move their lives forward. So again, thank you to everyone who made this a possibility. Thank you.
Gerald.
Good afternoon. My name is Gerald Collins. I'm the Division Chief for Major Investigations here at the State's Attorney's Office. I'd like to draw your attention to the presentation. First, before we get started, I'd like to thank our law enforcement partners the Baltimore City Police Department, who led this investigation, as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as well as the Maryland State Police. Without their efforts, this would be a case that we would not be able to bring forward, and we truly appreciate the work they've done on this case. As I stand here with Richard Gibson, my team captain, and Rena Cates and Hillary Soper, the team that worked on this with our law enforcement partners, we want to talk to you today about Dante Alexander Barr, a.k.a. Tavon Williams, a.k.a. Tay, T-A-Y. Mr. Barr was involved in a scheme, the object of which was to knowingly and intentionally take or place in location females with the intent that these individuals engage in unlawful sexual activity. Specifically from at least March 2017 through January 3rd, 2018, Barr identified, solicited, and recruited through electronic communications, social media, and other internet sources, as well as via personal contacts with common friends or associates, minor and adult female victims whose sexual service he intended to sell for profit. Once recruited, Barr would establish an operating procedure with the females in which he dictated the fees for the sexual services provided by them and the manner in which profits would be divided. Barr provided and paid for, among other things, clothing, costumes, and disguises to enhance or change females' age or appearance, and to record or photograph them engaged in various sexual or stages of undress and sexually provocative activities. Using various email addresses and cellular phones, Barr posted over 500 advertisements on Backpage. These images had his female victims listed under alias or pseudonym names, and advertisements for sexual encounters that were arranged by him and ultimately performed by the victims at his direction for monetary gain. Barr then used the cellular phones to arrange locations for which these sexual activities would take place, including at private homes, hotels, apartments, and other locations. Barr also provided transportation for the female victims to get to these locations to engage with customers who responded to his advertisements on Backpage. Throughout the period of the scheme, Barr arranged and rented several rooms from a variety of hotels throughout the state of Maryland, most notably here in Baltimore City. In preparation for his sexual encounters, Barr would provide alcohol, drugs, and illegal narcotics, as well as condoms, sexual lubricants, sexual toys, and other prostitution-related items to be possessed and used by the female victims when engaged in sexual acts with their customers. Following the sexual encounters, Barr would collect profits obtained and owned by the female victims based on the prices he set and for the services that they were to provide. At times, Barr would coerce or threaten the female victims. He would sometimes have sexual intercourse with the victims. He would assault them sexually. He would forbid them from leaving. And he would sometimes withhold money in order to keep them engaged in this human trafficking operation. On or about January 3rd, 2018 of this year, Baltimore police detectives and agents with the Bureau of the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, they conducted a sting in which they contacted Barr via his cellular phone in response to an ad that he had posted on Backpage. In response, Barr negotiated a price and a service for sexual activity with an underage minor. Once that was set up at a local hotel, law enforcement responded to that location and arrested him. Now, in our indictment, we have 8 specifically named individuals. Our indictment also alleges that there were several other victims who are unknown to the grand jury, but they're known by pseudonym names that were posted on the Backpage site. Over the course of this investigation, investigators determined, as the state's attorney has said, that there were numerous victims, upwards of 20 victims, who were identified as being associated with this operation. As the state's attorney has also noted, Barr has been charged in a 19-count indictment. As the state's attorney also said, remember that the indictment is only an allegation, and the defendant is presumed innocent unless until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt before a court of law. So counts 1 and count 2 are 2 general counts that speak to all of the victims in the case. Count 1 is human trafficking by persuading, inducing, enticing, or encouraging a minor to be taken to or placed in any place of prostitution. And count 2 is solicitation of a minor generally to engage in prostitution and human trafficking. Next slide, please. Count 3 refers to the person we've identified for this presentation as minor victim number 1. There's 1 count of human trafficking in count 3 by taking or causing a minor to be taken to a place for prostitution. Count 4, human trafficking by placing, causing, to be placed, or harboring another in any place for prostitution. Count 5, human trafficking by persuasion, inducing, enticing, or encouraging a minor to be taken to a place or any place for prostitution. And Count 6, human trafficking by receiving or acquiring money or proceeds from the earnings of a person engaged in prostitution. And specifically as relates to this victim, count number 7 is a third-degree sexual assault of a minor or a person over 21 who is alleged is the defendant, engaged in sex with a person under the age of 16 who would be this specific victim here. Next slide, please. Counts 8 through 11 refer specifically to identified minor number 2, and those are similar counts as the ones that you saw with identified victim number 1, except there's not a sexual assault charge for this victim. Counts 12 through 15 are the same counts as well, but they are specifically as it relates to identified minor victim number 3. And counts 16 through 19 apply to identified victim number 4. Once again, we'd like to thank our law enforcement partners for their work on this case. Our investigators spent many tireless hours working on this investigation. Without them, we would not have been able to bring, hopefully, Mr. Barr to justice as it relates to this investigation. And with that, I guess, take any questions.
Questions? No?
What is the age range of the victims? Like, they're minors, but are they, like, how?
So the age range, you want to answer that?
Okay. So throughout the course of the investigation, we have victims who were identified as young as 15 years old, and one who was identified as old as 18 years old. So there's an age range of 15, 16, 17, 18, through that range.
Can you talk a little bit more about how, like, you found these girls and how you sort of got them into this?
Well, as I said during the presentation, Mr. Barr would identify people through social media and through common acquaintances, and then through that he would then try to solicit them to become part of this operation.
But can you say any more, like, how? Or?
No, I cannot.
Other than what's outlined in the indictment, which kind of outlines how he did that, the solicitation online.
You mentioned other potential victims out there. Do you have any idea how many other young people might have been preying upon by this person?
So throughout the course of the investigation, we were able to identify approximately 25 or so people. Some of those individuals, we were able to identify them specifically by their name, by their identity. The majority of those people are identified, as I stated before, through pseudonym names, stage names, names that are associated with the business.
Thank you, guys.